Right, if we move on to question 3, which is to do with heritage and local distinctiveness, particularly relevant in Westminster. And how can we best achieve the right balance between safeguarding heritage assets and integrating new development, protecting and adding to the local distinctiveness of a city like Westminster? And we have touched on this already in the questions that have been raised, but does anyone have any other views they want to put forward on this?
Paul Villaway, HOK Architects. Commendably, the City Council has advanced its audits to a substantial degree in recent years, and that's to be keenly welcomed. There's still more work to be done, but particularly in terms of establishing consistency of language and of definition between UDP policy that has been new policy in the making, the sub-policies contained in the guidance, and the interpretation of that. And I cite, for example, buildings of character, buildings of merit, buildings of townscape significance. At the moment, there is, I think, a good deal of confusion about how these are defined and how far one could see losses of existing buildings or advancing new buildings and what the tests are. And if anything emerges from current activity, it is to establish that consistency of language. It used to exist. It is quite divergent now. And in some cases, the audits, which, for instance, I cite the Westbourne case, suggest that practically every building in the entire area is of merit. In other studies, it is less so. So I think then the methodology does need to be reviewed so that there is a consistency across broad policy, general policy, and individual conservation area policy. That way, I think one can make more value judgments and certainly for the development side, understand more clearly what matters and what doesn't, and whether one's going to have to pull together a major case to justify change or whether one can expect to run with support from the officers.
Very briefly to that. I think it's all to the good if there are a whole lot of buildings in one area that people generally like, enjoy living in, enjoy standing at bus stops opposite. They work quite well with buildings functionally. Surely this is all to the good. I mean, there seems to be a general view that buildings should be sort of trophy things that you see on the horizon, and what they're actually like to live under or work within sort of come a long way second. I think it is the pleasure that we get from those buildings, as long as they're serviceable and useful, that is equally important. I also think, I might just have to air this now, I'm sorry, but this sort of world architect business, I mean, I think we overlook a lot of very good, young, modern, contemporary, new architects who work with contemporary materials and are prepared to work on, if you like, normal scales that fits in rather well with a historic environment.
Okay,
Sorry, but I just had to add that.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to put anything forward? Is there anything in particular in policy? Do we have the policy about right in terms of the balance? Or, yeah, gentlemen.
Julian Robinson, London School of Economics. I think there's a slight problem with non-listed buildings in conservation areas. Just because something's old doesn't mean it's necessarily of merit and must be retained. And I think it's trying to get better definition on what exactly is a heritage asset. And I think that otherwise it's left open to interpretation and obviously will lead to a lot of discussion and debate. And I think it would give developers greater certainty if they knew which were the sort of the buildings, non-listed buildings of group value or whatever that the borough thought were worthy retention. But there are lots of buildings within conservation areas that are old that could quite really be replaced by a good contemporary modern replacement.
Thank you.
Tom Ball again. I think it's more concentration, more understanding in the detail, and looking at your question. I would, many times when I've been looking at planning applications, which I have done over the years, it's the sort of details which just escape the planning officer on the grounds that it is not their responsibility. And I give cases in point. Adding dormers to a terrace of houses where there are already dormers, why, when the planning application comes in for the neighbour to have a dormer, is he not invited to compare with what is already there so that they can be the same? Another very simple thing in my part of the world, in Pimlico, where a major house is being refurbished and a lot of money has been spent, the balustrade and balcony at first floor level is still that was put in immediately after the war in 1947. So it's just tubes and bits of concrete. Why could not the planning officer at that time suggest to the developer or the builder that he replaces that balustrade to be in conformity with, say, the rest of those in Belgrave Street or Belgrave Road? Those are just 2 points, but it is looking at the details which actually enhances the environment. And I have to say that the current planning law has now removed mostly that opportunity, as I understand it.
Did any of the officers want to make a point about GDPR or anything like that, or about the negotiation of planning?
Well, just an observation. My experience, I'm Tom Burke, an Area Design and Conservation Officer, is that those issues of negotiation and trying to get details of dormers or whatever correct take up an enormous part of my time, and I'm sure there's probably people in this audience who wish I spent less time on it. It's just my observation that process does occur but I think the point you're making is perhaps it's not consistently applied. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Was there any other points on question number 3? If not, we could move on to question number 4. Cracking.
I just wonder if that's some sort of case for more, I know it's a bit out of date these days, but design guide in a street. That if you produced a design guide and then if people conform to that, they could just get on with the changes. It cost an awful lot less than going through the process we go through at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next. Oh.
More attention of detail. I'm Anne Mallinson, a retired councillor, and I wondered if I could raise the question of mirrored glass here. Mm-hmm. It was in our previous guideline, and I am still of the opinion that mirrored glass makes a minority of the population ill, and I fail to see why, and I'm glad to see Westminster had it in their earlier policy, that we build buildings that make anybody ill, even if it's only a minority. And this also can be with tinted and with reflective glass, not only in mirrored glass. Thank you.